believe in robotics. I cannot say no, and it may have some good applications, and in the future may be great. But the main focus of the debate today, obviously I'm taking the downside, is what is the reality of robotics today, and is you guys gonna agree with me when I show you what I think about robotics right now, and I need to show you what things are behind this. And I think Nick is gonna regret didn't come today, but that's what you pay when you get invited to a party and you don't show up. Get ready to take some shit, yeah. So this is what happened. Okay, so this is my conflict. So this is Nick probably waiting for his helicopter on his helipad in the hospital. He's now making too much money that probably these meetings are a little thing for him. So he has more important things to do in Greece and Mediterranean, hanging around. So I wish you the best. But this is something that actually, this is from 2016, it was a prediction at that time that is actually getting through it. It's amazing how powerful is the world robot, especially in here, down the street in Wall Street. When investors listen about robot, this is like a music for the ears. Every venture capitalist start throwing money on it, So using here, they think like, and it's amazing because it's such an amazing marketing tool for you to say that you use robotics on the spine surgeries, on your surgeries, that actually in America is very interesting. I want to see how many of you guys have robots in your hospitals in here? Okay. So how many of you guys want to have a robot in your hospital? Okay. And then, which is very interesting, we witnessing a couple of times. Every week I had someone call me, hey, Juan, I work here in Utah, this and that, or whatever. I'm trying to buy a robot. Which one do you recommend me? And I said, why you're such in a rush? And then he said, well, because the hospital CEO told me that he has the money to buy the robot and I had to buy it by this year. So actually, this is a very interesting thing. While we're trying to push the CEOs in our hospitals to let us use this technology, screw or these biologics, actually on the robotic side, they're pushing us to buy $1 million toy. And it's so funny because one of my good friends from England, Kai Lam, I don't know if you guys know him. So he's a great guy. He was calling me the other day, Juan, I have to buy a freaking robot because, they're giving me a robot, and I have to use it. I said, well, he ended up buying something, it's very interesting. And it's all about marketing. It's amazing how the hospitals and the CEO like it. So the question is it reality or is just like Alice on the Wonder World? So this is the way that I see the robots right now. They're there, they're working the job, but it's kind of, it's still too early. I mean, it needs really something that. But then look at this. Robotics has a really good proposition. The proposal is what? Decrease the reaction exposure, obviously, because, you're using navigation systems and it sounds very good. Then it's more accurate. Obviously, when they work, exactly where you're going to place your screw, it goes. But the problem is a good robot relies on a really good navigation system. And as you know, there is no single navigation system that gives you real-time information. You're relying on a CT that was taken 15 minutes ago, and even now it's months ago, and then you're trying to get real-time information. So if your things move, then obviously we're blaming the robot, but the problem is the navigation. So I always say, if you really want to develop, all these companies, they say, you want to develop a good robot, you have to have an amazing navigation system first because you don't do it. And then the third one is obviously, give you all the benefits of the navigation. It's not the robot that gives you the three-dimensional view. But which is interesting, this is the good thing. We're going to show you what is amazing on this thing. Read this. This is crazy. This is from the Forbes. This came in here, one of the local economic things. So the guy who put together, the guy who invented, how it is, this is talking about Globus One. He became millionaire. Amazing business, huh? It's great. So why do you think every company is trying to get a robotic equivalent on their portfolio? Because it's a lot of potential there. So actually a robot on the spine makes someone billionaire. It's amazing, and it's going to come. But then the real truth is this one. The software, what we have on the system that we use right now, is very unstable. I don't know if you guys been using it. This is, to me, I always think of robotics like playing golf. It's like you play 18 holes, but it's only one driver shot that you did it good that makes you come next day. So this is the robotics. When it works amazing. But 90% of the time, it's like the software falls apart, the battery is not working, the whatever actuator is not really doing what it has to do, the navigation didn't fuse with that. You know, it's like too many little things. And then the other thing is for us as an end user, they know standardization. When they're trying to sell to you the system, they tell you, oh, you can put any screw in the market, you can do it. Once you buy it, they go and say, well, it only works good with our implants. It only do good with our, and then you get tied up, you know? So it's not really a standardization, there is not open. And then the workflow is very interesting because the open surgeons, they say that the robotics works amazing. I say, well, I mean, no wonder why, because you can put with 90+% of accuracy a pedicle screw in a freehand technique. It's not true, Avelino? I mean, freehand technique. So then you do it with an open, when you do an open robotic screw, I always say you're using the robot as a confirmatory method because you see your entry point, you see your trajectory early. But when you come to the real life, which all of you guys are, because this is an MIS course, when you're working through this incision, working this deep, and you don't see nothing but skin, that's when you really have to rely on the robot. And I wanted to know how many of the true MIS surgeons are gonna tell me that it's amazing, you know? We work this paper, as you saw it, very accurate when it works. But when it doesn't work, it's as bad as you want, you know? And then obviously, again, this is a problem for navigation. Robotics, they don't have real-time information. As long as we're relying on a CT half an hour ago, it's not really good. So we have this, and then watch this. How many are in the market? I mean, it's so hard. It's worse than buying a car. How do you know? You know, it's like a million brands. Each one has a little thing in here, bag in here, the little carbon fiber, the steering drill, the ceramic brakes, and then which one is the real thing that I need, you know? You need something that pulls you from A to B, or you need the Ferrari that really makes you win races, but you cannot even go 300 miles because you have to send it for some repairs, you know? So it's very complicated, and the problem is we are in the middle of that, you know? And then, okay, this is our paper, 90% accuracy, this, that, but let me show you something in here. This is our learning curve. I never seen a roller coaster more weird than this, you know? We started and we said, we're getting better, and then bad, and then better and bad. We don't have like a true learning curve, you know? And the reason is because the limitation is on the system itself. It's not on the surgical skills, because supposedly when you're gonna put a screw with a robot, basically the arm put you right there and you just need to drill, yeah? So the only learning curve is make sure that you don't skive with the drill. After that, it just go like that. So then, and then also when you're trying to buy them, they tell you that this is all the application for the robotics. All these things, you don't do nothing. The only thing that you do is to put a pedicle screw. So I'm gonna show you one little fast thing here. This is one of my cases. You know, I can make all these things, beautiful music, you know, marketing. So I'm competing with all my surgeons around the city where I live, you know. But at the end, what I'm doing in here is just putting 4 screws 3 times. That's what it takes for me to do it. And then I still putting the screw in my hand, you know. Now they say you can do it with the real beat and this and that, but you know, I will do what Roger do it all the time. Good navigation system, and you avoid $1 million there. So, and then I'm gonna show you, for example, what happened. Can happen to you. This is like an amazing option. Watch this. Beautiful technology, robotic buttered milk. This is what's gonna happen to you guys. You were gonna love it, yeah? That's great. I love robotics, you know? What a great technology, you know? So I would say, you know, this is my conclusion that Rob showed. So at the end, you know, someone is getting the big chunk of the money out of here. So thanks very much, guys. And say hi to Nick Theodore, please, Rob. Okay, what do you think, Pimenta?
Yeah.
You gonna buy one?
No way. I will wait for the future. So looks like both of you agree that this is a future technology, right? Any comments on that? Is it real? Is it for the future? What do you think, Roger? Do you have a robot? Do you use it?
For spine, we don't have a robot. We have, they have the Da Vinci, which is totally different. There's a device, and I think we got to, again, we use words for different things. The robot that we talk about here is just a device to put in a screw. There's nothing that the robot does that you can't do with regular navigation. And I think it needs to be expanded. It needs to be integrated with freehand or navigation, and then it's really more useful. But if it's just a tool to put a screw in, then it's not. There's no real killer application here. There's nothing beyond just. There's no real vision. I think we need the vision beyond putting in a screw.
Please.
Well, I agree with you. And the problem here is that most of the robots on the market, they are made by the industry for the industry. I think we're going to need robots that are made for the surgeon.
And for the patient, right?
Yeah, and for the patient, obviously. But the situation right now is actually that the robot is a glorified instrument holder. And obviously, the only thing that they compensate for is the shaking of the surgeon's hand. In future, I think we need robots that are a little bit smarter. And I think that there is already possibilities. You have been working with one of those that you actually get live feedback from the robot. We have been working with a prototype when we get force feedback. So actually, as soon as the screw starts to skive, you're gonna see a red alert that something is going wrong. So definitely it's something for the future, but I think that as it had been pointed out here, we need surgeons to be involved in developing those, and it should be some kind of a universal tool, not some way for a company to sell implants.
I would have a question to Timothy on the future, because I also agree that robotics are going to be the future in some time down the road. Even though right now it's only a tailor manipulated, it's not even a robot at this point in time. But I'm a bit worried that if I would buy a robot now, it's going to cost me, I don't know, some 7-digit number, and then I already know now that in 4 years from now, this will be an old-fashioned piece of shit that I can throw away. So I have to be aware now that if I buy something today or my hospital buys something, in 4 years, I have to buy a new one. In 8 years, the third version. And I'm afraid that this may work in the US, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to work in the rest of the world. And how do you think that's going to be addressed?
So a couple of comments, and I'm speaking here for Nick Theodore. I'm not actually a big robot guy, but no, I mean, I think with business in general and with technology in general, look at the iPhone. I mean, the iPhone that first came out, whenever it did in 2000 or whatever it was, that model's nothing like the one now. Now, to kind of get to your point, I think one of the things that you can do is you can negotiate with the company when you go to buy one of these devices. And I think that the companies they're not stagnant. I mean, I can tell you, having visited Globus and talking with some of them, they are interested in improving the current robot. And I agree with you. The current model will be obsolete. I mean, I think that was shown. The Excelsius, I think, is a step up from the Mazor. And I think everyone's trying to improve, but negotiate with them and say, look, what are my options moving forward when you do develop something better? Am I going to get a discount? Am I going to have to throw this thing out? Because nobody wants a refurbished robot that, doesn't provide the same types of things that it provide, that you want it to provide. The other flip side of all this, and I somewhat agree actually with the glorified, holder for the arm. I mean, that's probably what it is right now in many ways. But again, I think what works for you is what works best. And I think that, people have shown that the image-guided results are equal, and that the technology will need to get better to show that the results are better. But we have to study it. I don't think people are studying it either in a prospective, a real scientific fashion yet.
Any other comment? Bill?
Yeah, I've actually never been to a meeting where all the spine surgeons in the meeting stood up and said, a robot is what I want. It's the best thing I've ever heard of. And yet, if you talk to anybody on Wall Street or any company, there's just millions and millions of dollars going into that. And I just think that disconnect is interesting. If anyone was listening, they would say, well, we don't really need one. But again, I'm not really sure it matters to us, because this technology is not anything about robotics. This technology is simply about selling pedicle screws and matching it up to the instrumentation in the company that you do. I mean, this is the same thing that happened with navigation 15 years ago, when it wasn't really useful. And you could only use it with a certain company. And I think we're just repeating the same thing. And the companies have realized that they can give us $1 million of equipment, and as long as we use $1 million worth of pedicle screws. Mm-hmm. So this is just an opportunity to buy our business more than anything else.
And I think that's what the hospital administrators are willing, the marketing deal. Our hospitals had a Da Vinci for many, many years. They just got one of the robots, but my general surgery colleagues are using the Da Vinci to do inguinal herniorrhaphies, because it allows them to tell the patient that they're doing a robotic herniorrhaphy.
But that started out in prostate surgery, and there's a significant improvement in prostate surgery without a robot.
Right, and
So we don't
also for an inguinal hernia as well? Yeah. But my point is that the general surgeon's marketing for an inguinal hernia.
So I'll make a quick comment. So like I do a lot of international work, and one of the things that concerns me about the pace at which Europe and America is progressively pushing the limits with technology is that we're leaving behind a huge section of our world that cannot handle providing care with the current type of technology that we're using. And so right now it's not so bad, because we all still have a history of using what we've used historically. We can all do an open laminectomy just as well as we can do it through a tube. But as we move further and further away from us actually doing these operations, we are creating a pretty significant disparity in education, to the point where I don't think people from other countries are going to come listen to our talks anymore, because it has absolutely no relevance or significance with how they are currently delivering care on a daily basis. And so just to contextualize it, I think it's important that we keep driving technology in the right direction for our patients. There's no question about that. But I do worry a little bit about this education gap that we're going to be creating. Not so much education of which pathologies need to be operated on, but how we're actually doing the operations, the technical part of it. And to the point where, we have visiting surgeons with us all the time from other parts of the world, and we are educating them, but then they're like, I can't go home and use any of this because I simply don't have these things available to me. So just a word, I guess, out there. Although if I were to project in the future, I do believe robots will take over.
So, just a quick comment about the disconnect between the VC world, the venture capitalist world, and our world.
Talk louder, please.
Yeah. So many people believe that machine learning and artificial intelligence will be able to, do more things at the OR. So this is basically why they're investing heavily on this kind of technology, because they think that there is a great potential. Right now, it's just for pedicle screw placement, but in the future, the applications will really expand. The machine learning and artificial intelligence is really expanding right now, so we might see more progress in that field.
Maybe also one comment, being that I use one of these systems, I think it's not all just black and white. And you can't generalize and say robots are just glorified this and that, and they have no workflow and they're slower. And then on the other hand, I can do it all. There's somewhere in between, and there's plenty different systems. So we'd have to individually analyze the systems that are out there and see what the benefits are and the pros and cons are on the individual systems. Like on my system, I have the workflow, I have the efficiency. I cannot say, because it's a hybrid system between me moving the machine and then it working with the applications I have And it's also generally applicable to all instrumentation systems. It's not bound to any company. Obviously not the navigational system, but it's not bound to any screw company. And I think the analogy to the iPhone didn't come out on the market in this form. So there's an evolution there. So you got to put something out on the market at the current technological status, and it's going to have to be developed and further developed with the surgeons. That's why I addressed that issue, that it needs a bridge between industry and surgeons, and it has to be tailored to clinicians to be able to develop it in that kind of way and shape and form that we need it for the patient and for us. And the iPhone, like I said, didn't come out with 4 cameras and perfect back in 2000. There's been 11 generations for it to get there where it is because the technology wasn't there yet. So, and the only way, like I said before, is to judge on something that you don't use and have is also pretty difficult. As in, you can judge in general, but when, like now, I had an issue where I had to send it back, some repair issue, and then I had a couple of cases like an ex-girlfriend where you say, hey, she was, and then I say to myself, hey, I could do with my robot now. This case would be nice to use my robotic arm. And you don't know what you had until you miss it in that case. So I think when you use it, you learn to where the benefits are and where the need is or no need. So just as a quick summary.
Yeah, last comment.
I had a comment and question to Bill Taylor. You know, what you mentioned about, I think what you're saying seems to make sense, that, you know, we're being pushed because the companies want to push pedicle screws. But I look at robotics as kind of like endoscopy, right? Everybody wants to hear about it, but nobody really uses it. And with endoscopy, there's no real reason there's no big business really for companies. There are no screws, actually the opposite. So, but there still seems to be an interest with surgeons. So isn't it just more than pedicle screws then? Maybe there's a real genuine interest in the surgical community though, with robotics, just as there is with endoscopy. We just don't really understand yet, you know, what the final, you know, value is.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that there absolutely is a huge interest. Certainly it's like the iPhone. I think the biggest problem is not everyone realizes it's going to change, but when the iPhone came out, it was still useful. So I'm not sure that we have an initial use for it right now. And that's why it has to be pushed. 10, 15 years from now, everyone's going to be doing it. I would be more concerned about what Greg was just talking about, is the gap that we're going to create, number one, and also the gap we're going to create in our residency education, our training too. Not that everything has to be done open, but I mean, I'm having people finish now who have never put a pedicle screw in without navigation. You know, and pretty soon they're not going to have ever done it without a robot. So, and I think that's a little bit of a problem, but maybe I'm just cranky and old too.
Okay, this ends our discussion.